At my graduation, Mom whispered. This degree means nothing without a real job. I smiled and hugged her. The next morning, my face was on every news channel. I smiled when she said it. Not the kind of smile you give when something's funny, but the kind you give when you're too tired to argue, too used to disappointment, and too focused on what comes next. The sun was blistering down on the university quad, and my cap felt 2 sizes too tight. The dean had just handed me my diploma, and the photographers were still clicking. I looked out into the crowd and spotted my mother, sharp as always in her neatly pressed skirt suit, clutching her handbag like it was a weapon. She hugged me stiffly. Then leaned in, lips barely moving. This degree means nothing without a real job, she whispered. I didn't flinch. Just smiled, pulled her in closer, and held that moment in my mind like a bullet in the chamber. She didn't know what I knew. She didn't know I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night for the past year. That while she was telling me to give up the tech fantasy, I was building an app in stealth mode, a machine learning model that could detect deepfakes in real time. A project born from late-night code, borrowed servers, and the scraps of self-worth she hadn't managed to grind out of me. To her, success had only 2 faces, a nurse or an accountant. Something safe. Predictable. Respectable. But I never fit into her mold. Not when I took apart the toaster at 9 just to see how the timer worked. Not when I coded my first chatbot at 13 using a school laptop I wasn't supposed to be using. And definitely not when I applied to college behind her back, scraping together scholarships, grants, and night shifts at a gas station just to afford it. When she said those words at graduation, I didn't fire back. Because I already knew what was coming. What she didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that I had just launched Echo Shield, a small, unassuming app tucked away on a corner of the web, already spinning its gears quietly in the background. That night, I watched the fireworks go off. Not in the sky. On my screen. It started with a notification at 2:13 a.m. I was half asleep on the futon in my shoebox apartment, still in my cap and gown, believe it or not. I hadn't bothered to change after the graduation dinner. I just sat there, replaying my mom's words over and over until the screen glow lulled me into a kind of restless nap. Then the ping. It was a tweet. From someone I didn't follow, didn't know. A tech influencer, big in cybersecurity circles, Derek Haynes aka D3 Recon. I blinked at the screen, heart rate jumping. Just tested a new app called Echo Shield. Real-time deepfake detection with 0 latency? If this is real, it's game-changing. Thread. My hands trembled as I sat up straight. I stared, then refreshed the thread. Already over 4,000 likes. A flood of replies. Security pros. Journalists. Even a few names I recognized from LinkedIn, people who had ghosted my internship applications just a year ago. I clicked on the link he included. It was a screen recording, Derek loading 2 side-by-side videos. One, a legitimate live stream from a political press conference. The other, a manufactured deepfake of the same speaker, manipulated to say something inflammatory. Within a second, Echo Shield flagged the fake. Timestamped. Source URL traced. Confidence rating, 98.7%. He didn't stop there. He tested it again. And again. Each clip trickier than the last. It never failed. By 3 a.m., the video had hit 200,000 views. My inbox? Flooded. A data scientist at Twitter. A verification team lead from Meta. A producer from 60 Minutes. Even a DM from a senator's staffer asking if I'd be open to a briefing. I remember sitting there in the dark, the city outside still asleep, and thinking, this is real. After all the years of hiding what I loved, of hearing my mother call my work pointless screen time, the world was suddenly paying attention. But I didn't reply to anyone. Not yet. I just sat back, let the storm build, and whispered out loud. Now you'll see. By dawn, my phone was overheating. I had gone from a nobody with a GitHub account to a digital ghost-turned phenomenon. By 7 a.m., Wired had emailed. The Verge wanted a quote. CNN tagged me in a segment teaser. And somewhere between all the noise, A message came through from someone I never expected. Saw the news. I don't understand it all. But I guess, congratulations. Mom. That was her way of saying, I was wrong. But she didn't say that. Not directly. Not ever. The news cycle had already picked up the story. 22-year-old launches AI tool to fight deepfakes. Built in a dorm room. Backed by nothing. Now hailed as a national security asset. They use phrases like self-taught genius and dark horse innovator, as if I had just appeared out of thin air. But I wasn't new. I was just invisible. Until now. A well-known evening anchor from National Focus reached out. Prime time slot. Live. 10 minutes, no script. They wanted to hear from me. Not the team, there wasn't one. Not a PR rep, couldn't afford one. Just the kid who taught himself to code in a basement full of discarded printers and empty soda cans. I agreed. And when I stepped into that studio, tight blazer, damp palms, the whole deal, I didn't see lights or cameras. I saw my mother's expression the night she found my old Arduino boards and threw them out, saying, build something real. I sat down. The host smiled and asked the question I knew was coming. So how did you come up with this idea? I looked straight into the camera. And let the truth out. I didn't hesitate. I'd rehearsed the answer for years, on bus rides, in cafeteria corners, between night shifts and code deployments. Every syllable had been waiting in my throat like a storm. I built Echo Shield, I said, because I grew up being told I wasn't building anything real. There was a pause. Not from me, from the host. She tilted her head slightly, surprised. I went on. My mom raised me alone. She worked hard, made sure there was food, clothes, structure. But love? Encouragement? Not so much. The producer behind the glass raised her eyebrows. The host shifted uncomfortably in her chair. But I didn't stop. She used to tell me I'd never make it playing with computers. That nobody hires dreamers. That if I wasn't going into nursing or accounting, I was wasting my life. I leaned in just a little toward the camera. Cool, calm. But you know what? That voice, her voice, it lit a fire under me. Every late night I spent debugging code, every shift I pulled to pay tuition, every time I got ghosted by recruiters. I could hear her saying, this won't amount to anything. A tight smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Well, Mom, you were right. The host's eyes widened. The room went still. Because this app? It's not just a job. It's creating them. Teams of engineers, ethicists, moderators, journalists. It's going to take all of them. All because you reminded me every single day that I needed a real job. I let that sit. Let it breathe. So, Mom, thanks. That was the clip that made the evening news. That was the quote that trended on Twitter. That was the soundbite that played on a loop across breakfast tables and newsroom floors and one living room where a woman sat, phone in hand, watching her son finally take the mic. I walked off set to silence. Not the awkward kind. Not even the shocked kind. It was the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks open. The producer gave me a nod, part impressed, part afraid. The host avoided eye contact. I think she knew what I'd just done wasn't just an interview. It was a detonation. My phone buzzed before I even made it back to the green room. We're seeing a 400% spike in search traffic. The app just broke into top 10 on the tools and productivity charts. A senator's chief of staff is requesting a call. But the one message I was waiting for came in just after the headlines hit. From her. What the hell did you just do? Not. Congratulations. Not. You made it. Just that. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched it all unfold. Online, people were calling it a revolution. One-man army. The next Elon. The kind of tech we actually need. Meanwhile, interviews flooded in. Offers, grants, meetings. A European news outlet called me the ghost coder. Some AI watchdog group even nominated Echo Shield for a humanitarian tech award. But while all that was happening, her world was unraveling. My cousin texted. Aunt Lisa just walked out of the break room. Everyone's whispering. Another. Your mom's Facebook is deactivated. Was she even at the ceremony? And then the kicker. Did you really say that on live TV? Oh yes. I really did. That night, I stayed up watching clips of myself from every angle. TikToks with captions like, "When Mom said he needed a real job," and then cut to, "So Mom, thanks." Reactions. Duets. Memes. And then a photo. Someone had snapped a picture of her standing at her front door, phone to her ear, hand over her mouth. Caption. Local woman watches her son become famous after roasting her on national TV. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mean-spirited. But it was everywhere. She had become part of the story, whether she liked it or not. The next morning, she called again. Then again. 12 missed calls before I finished brushing my teeth. When I finally picked up, I didn't speak. Her voice came through small and strained. "You embarrass me." I let the silence hang. Then I said, "No. You inspired me." She exhaled sharply, but I didn't wait for her reply. I hung up. She could sit in the silence now. I had spent enough years in it. By the time the second news cycle hit, I wasn't just a headline. I was a blueprint. Panels on tech shows dissected EchoShield like it was a Rosetta Stone. Universities requested guest lectures. Venture capitalists slid into my inbox with polite desperation. One message just said, "Whatever it takes. Let's talk." Attached was a blank check. But I didn't cash in. Not yet. Because while the world wanted a product, I was still building a purpose. For years, I was just a pair of headphones in the corner of a coffee shop, hacking away in silence while the baristas whispered about the weird kid who never ordered anything more than a small drip. Now, reporters were begging for a peek at my workstation, and senators were requesting private demos. But I hadn't forgotten. I remembered every cold dinner at home, every time I showed my mom a prototype and she responded with, "Is that going to pay rent?" Now, the thing she dismissed as playing with screens was getting quoted by news anchors who once laughed off deepfakes as internet pranks. It wasn't just an app. It was armor. And I was building a forge. I rented a modest office, bare walls, 2 standing desks, a couple second-hand monitors. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I brought in 2 friends from college who believed in EchoShield back when it was just a sketch on a napkin. They didn't ask for salaries up front. Just equity. Purpose. Vision. One of them, Nate, said something as we hung the whiteboard on the wall. "Feels like we're stepping into something we won't come back from." I nodded. That's the point. We didn't sleep that first week. We rebuilt the back end, tightened the detection threshold, prepped for API licensing. When news broke that a deepfake had nearly altered a UN press release, EchoShield was already on standby. We deployed quietly. The intercept was flawless. Later, someone from the UN emailed us a simple sentence. "You just saved us an international headache." But I still hadn't answered my mom's texts. She'd tried everything. "I didn't mean it like that. You know I was just worried about you. People at work keep asking if I'm proud. You could have told them something nicer." But I didn't owe her a prettier version of the truth. I had lived the unpretty version for 22 years. Success doesn't come with instructions. No handbook, no moral compass, no pause button. One morning you're fixing bugs in sweatpants, the next you're staring across a table from a Fortune 500 CEO asking if you'd consider a full acquisition, for a number that would have made my mother faint. I didn't flinch. I slid the offer back and said, "I'm not selling." Not because the number wasn't tempting. It was. Life-changing. But I didn't build EchoShield to cash out. I built it because I had to. Because every time she rolled her eyes and asked what I was even trying to prove, I dug deeper. Every time she told someone, "He's still doing that computer stuff," with that sigh like I was a charity case, I pushed harder. Now I had a choice to make. Not about money. About legacy. My inbox was chaos. Government briefings, university partnerships, press requests. But one email stood out. Not because of who sent it, but how short it was. Subject: dinner? From Lisa M. Body: just the two of us. I'll cook. No cameras. No expectations. I stared at the screen for a long time. Was this guilt? Regret? A PR move? Or maybe, just maybe, an opening? I didn't owe her a ribbon-wrapped reunion. But I also didn't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I let her see the person she tried to silence. So I replied, "One dinner. You listen more than you talk. That's the deal." She agreed. We met 3 days later. She made meatloaf. Of course. The same one she used to serve when I got BS on report cards, calling them wasted potential. She asked about Echo Shield. I explained. She asked how it works. I simplified. She said, "It sounds important." That was the closest I'd ever heard her come to saying "I'm proud of you." And then, between bites, she said something I didn't expect. "I didn't know how to raise a son I didn't understand." She didn't say sorry. She didn't cry. But in that moment I saw it, not change, but the beginning of it. So I told her flatly, "You tried to turn me into something safe. I became something necessary instead." And we ate in silence after that. But not a cold silence. Just room. Room to breathe. Room to rebuild, if we wanted to. The thing about building something that matters is, you stop being the only one carrying it. It grows legs. It moves without you. A month after the interview, Echo Shield was no longer my app. It had been integrated by 5 major news networks, 2 investigative journalism platforms, and 1 international watchdog group. Its code, once handwritten in caffeine-fueled insomnia, was now protected by layers of security I never thought I'd need. We licensed the core to fact-checking organizations. A Brazilian media outlet used it to prove a viral election video was forged. A teenage activist in the Philippines used our browser extension to call out a deepfake smear campaign. Her video went viral. And she credited Echo Shield by name. That hit me harder than the headlines. Because when I started this thing, I just wanted to prove her wrong. But now, I was helping strangers feel right in a world trying to twist their truth. I started getting messages like, "This helped me defend my cousin's reputation after a fake video spread. My grandmother sent me something from Facebook, and I used Echo Shield to show her it was fake. It's the first time she believed me over a meme. Your app is the only reason I didn't fall for it. Thank you." And suddenly, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about the whispered, real jab that started this whole avalanche. It was about giving people tools to fight back against lies wearing human faces. Meanwhile, offers kept rolling in, offers with commas, stock options, promises of strategic alignment. One venture firm sent a gift basket with a pen engraved with "Just sign." I sent it back unopened. I wasn't building to sell. I was building to last. My team was growing. I hired 2 engineers from my scholarship days. A former ethics researcher from MIT joined us after saying she was sick of watching talent chase clicks instead of clarity. I gave her the title head of integrity. She earned it before the ink dried. We had whiteboards now. Meeting rooms. A Slack channel full of GIFs and bug reports. It was everything I had dreamed of back when I was coding in the dark, hunched over a stolen Wi-Fi signal, while my mother paced outside the door muttering about wasting electricity. And then came the article. The New York Times. Front page. "The boy who saw through the lies, Echo Shield's creator, is just getting started." The profile was sharp, not sugar-coated. It talked about how my upbringing gave me a high tolerance for rejection, how I built the app as a kind of armor against invisibility, and how I once responded to a critic with nothing but a screenshot of a rising stock ticker. They asked me about my mother. I didn't dodge the question. "She taught me how to survive without praise," I said. Which turned out to be a very useful skill. Somewhere, I imagine she clipped that line and reread it 3 times. That week, a new conversation started online, not about the app, but about voices. Parents who told their kids to stay safe instead of bold. Teachers who confused discipline with limitation. People who grew up with ceilings where skies should have been. A viral tweet quoted me and added, "Support your kids, or they'll go out and build an empire just to prove you wrong." Funny thing is, that wasn't far from the truth. I used to think closure was a conversation. That if I said the right thing at the right time, with enough force, or maybe just the right tone, I'd unlock something in her. In the past. In me. But some doors don't open. They close. And sometimes you're the one who has to lock them from the outside and walk away. It happened 2 days after the Times article. I was invited back for another live interview, this time, a full segment on a Sunday primetime show. The kind of spot where they bring on former presidents and billionaires. I almost said no. What more was there to say? Then I thought about all the kids like me. Sitting in dark bedrooms, being told their dreams were unrealistic. I thought about every forced smile I wore after she said something like, "Don't get your hopes up." I thought about the boy I used to be. So I said yes. The studio was bigger this time. Brighter. They put powder on my face. Offered me tea. Called me sir. The host smiled, but I could tell she knew what everyone really wanted. So she didn't waste time. "Before we dive into the app's future," she said, "I want to give you a chance. You said last time your mother's doubt fueled your success. If she's watching now, is there anything else you want to say?" I looked into the lens. Not at her. At all of them. The kids. The dreamers. The doubted. And I said, "My mom told me I needed a real job. That passion doesn't pay bills. That tech was for those people on the news, not people like us." What she didn't know was that every time she said that, she was handing me fuel. Not encouragement. Not support. Gasoline. And I was the match. The host shifted, eyes wide. I kept going. "So if you're watching, Mom, thank you. You reminded me every day that I had to prove myself. And I did. You said I'd never make it without a real job. You were right. Because now I'm creating them." I smiled. Cool. Not smug. Just done. I didn't wait for applause. I didn't look for the host's approval. I stood up, shook her hand, and walked off set. Outside, the city buzzed like it didn't just hear something seismic. But I knew. Somewhere in a quiet house, her phone was blowing up. Family texting. Coworkers whispering. The mirror not looking quite the same. I walked down the street, past office towers and blinking billboards. Past cafes full of college kids and grocery stores with magazines that now had my face on them. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything.